So hello everybody. I've been asked to come here today to talk about food tech and why do you care. And I believe that food tech is the future of food. And the reason starts here. So this beautiful planet of ours, 7.5 billion of us living here, and we're all hungry. And the question is, how do we make sure that we're all well fed in the years ahead? But it's not just 7.5 billion people we're talking about. We're looking at numbers of 10 billion people predicted by 2050. So these are big numbers. They feel like they're far away. But what if I told you that 78 million people will be added to the planet each year, on average? If you look at that number, you look at 2050, you understand that some of the global problems that I'll talk about that affect food and food security and where tech can sometimes play a role, we don't have 30-ish years to wait to solve those. The first one I'll look at here is increased food demands and shrinking farmland. So as the world population grows, we also see the additional countries starting to increase their use of meat. So in some of the developed countries, the use of meat has been huge for a long time, but in less developed countries, that's increasing 5% over the year on average for meat and 2 to 5% for dairy. So the demand on the livestock is increasing, but along with that, demand on food in general. We've got shrinking farmlands because a lot of the farmland is being converted into other areas such as sometimes shopping malls, sometimes living areas. We're losing trees as a result of that, so there's a lot of things that need to be done in that environment. Environmental concerns impact water, they impact air, they impact land. You see here a beach full of plastic. A lot of that is going to be coming from the food industry and the way we eat every day and how that can and will be disposed of. Alongside of this comes animal rights. What's the environment for the animals that we eat or serve us? What's an environment for the workers that grow the food for us or harvest the food for us or in the factories? And then we move into the health so sickness and health begins in many cases with where we eat. Obesity is on the rise, but at the same time, so is malnourishment. And sometimes people who are either overweight or unweight have the same types of health issues. And if you look at what we're eating, and you can look at this beautiful burger this boy is staring at with great delight, you may assume that that is meat. And it may be meat from an animal that actually suffered in the process of getting this burger, but it also, because of food tech, could have been grown in the lab, or it could be a plant-based protein that looks like meat, tastes like meat, or it could be simply a vegetable burger. So food tech is absolutely impacting the way our nutrition is available, the way it's actually becoming made into a food product that we can provide, and changing the way we even look at some of the basic ingredients that have been on our tables for years. Another thing we look at is urbanization. So we see an increasing number of people heading to the cities where the jobs are as the traditional jobs are being replaced by automation. And we'll look at that a little bit further down the line in my presentation, but we all are impacted by this switch, whether in the rural environment or the urban environment, but being able to feed an urban population while having a limited number of people in the farmlands is also an issue. Increasing disposable income. This means that people have more money to spend on foods they actually want to eat, as opposed to foods that they actually need to eat, meaning that a calorie isn't just a calorie. We're looking for biohacking, from a biohacking perspective. We want to have superfoods. We want to have foods that offer more than just fuel for our system, but actually offer fuel for our brains and for the energy we want to have. So we're seeing a lot of impact in the way that consumers are now demanding transparency in the food chain. They're demanding increased benefits within functional foods, and that's being impacted by the way food plus tech is responding to this question. At the same time, you have food insecurity. So we've seen recent reports on families in Yemen. So on one hand, you have people who are eating too much food and overweight, and yet on the other hand, you have people who don't have enough food on their plate. There are ways that food tech is solving that as well. Food waste is a question that faces us all. It wasn't just the plastic on the beach, but it's a question of, does packaging, for example, prevent waste, or does it cause waste? The answer is yes, it does both. But we need to look at ways that we limit the amount of waste that's left over, and can the waste of one company or one service or one industry within the food industry become the raw ingredient for another. We're seeing this quite a bit as time goes by. So the food industry is changing, and tech is providing the answers. And some of the answers may surprise you. So data analytics may or may not be something you think about in terms of food tech. Certainly this one surprises a lot of people. So I was just having a chat backstage with one of the speakers who will come on shortly, And we're talking about the question of who grows the most tomatoes in the world. The answer is Netherlands. And they're using drones to actually identify what those tomato plants need in terms of nutrients, when they're ready for harvesting, and so on. So not only is it being grown in a greenhouse environment that's highly techy, but they're using an additional level of technology on top of that to understand when is the optimum time to grow that and what are the optimum growing periods for it. So drones, robotics, AI, absolutely involved in food tech nowadays. Alternative proteins, has anybody out there tried insects? You like them? So this is going to be a part of the future of protein. But not everybody wants to eat bugs. I like the taste of bugs, and I like the crunch of bugs. I don't always like the legs and wings. But I did try a product that has, for example, an oil that's based out of mealworms. Really interesting because you don't actually see the bugs, so there's a lower threshold for trying it, but it also solves the problem of the palm oil crisis that we're seeing around the world. So insects are a huge thing. Lab-grown meat, many of you may or may not have heard of Memphis Meats, who's creating meat inside of a laboratory that is literally beef, ground beef, but it's not coming from a cow that ever saw the light of day, but rather from cells that came from that animal that then had been grown. Plant-based products protein products are becoming increasingly popular. I'm sure many of you have tasted things that are meat-like that are based on plants, but also more and more we're seeing plants being plants and being used as protein sources. So whether that's from a grain or it's from a legume, but this is an area that's absolutely going to grow. Logistics, always an ongoing problem. How do you